I was in New York because a French magazine had commissioned a profile that would best illustrate the city, and I had only 2 more days before flying back to Paris. I was wandering around the city with my camera, looking for someone extraordinary who might make a good story. By chance, I met a friend who told me about a young French girl named Christèle. They had been neighbors, and he had crossed paths with her dozens of times without ever really noticing her. Then one day, she asked him the time, and he noticed that there was something strange about her, but he couldn't really say what. He thought I should meet her.
My face to the sky, dreaming about just how I could go. And if I know when I finally get there, taking off my glasses, some pokes in my lashes. Somehow I know there's a time for every star to shine. Everybody got this something, make you smile like an itty bitty child. Everybody got that something. Everybody got this something. Hey, people keeping score. Oh, you better hurry up and get yours, 'cause somebody else got your spot before you even die. Seeking you shall find out everything in my own sweet time. I take my chances with what I believe is all that I know. So the rule don't fly, keep you from moving on. So get it right.
He gave me the address of the coffee shop in Brooklyn where they had first met. I went and hung out there all morning. Finally, she showed up. I introduced myself and said that I wanted to take her picture for a French magazine. She looked at me and thought about it for a moment. I still had no idea what it was that my friend saw in her that was so special, and I began to wonder whether I was wasting my time. I offered to buy her a coffee. And then, all of a sudden, I noticed what was amazing about Christèle.
Of course, yeah.
Well, not 100% of what I do, but they are afraid that the other person disagree.
You know,
with
sometimes
what
I'm
one
happy,
person is gonna
and it's
do
like
or
100%
say, and
happy.
the other person
You know,
is
the
gonna be
right
like, no,
side
you
and the
shouldn't,
left
don't
side,
do it, or,
everybody's
you know.
happy, and it's
And
such
then
it's such a pleasure
then it's a
because
fight.
even
As she
if
spoke to
I
me,
am in two different
her head
places
actually
at the same time,
separated into 2 distinct halves.
both persons are
Her
really
right
happy,
side
so it
continued
makes
our
it easier,
conversation,
you know.
while her left side was silent.
Two people are
It was silent because it was no longer there. It had gone to the beach. She was in 2 places at once. She was with me and elsewhere at the same time.
But it's just impossible because the two people are at the same time 2 different places.
In fact, her head splits in 2 when she loses concentration. Each side of her face is independent of the other, and she can only control one at a time. We left the coffee shop, and I started to photograph her as we walked through the streets of Brooklyn. When it comes to making a decision, it's a battle between right and left. Wherever she finds herself, she's dissatisfied with where she is or what she's doing. She is forever wishing she was elsewhere. She doesn't want what she wants. Christèle decided to leave France for the U.S. after a love affair broke her heart. She set out by swimming, half hoping that she would drown. She was stronger than she thought, and a few months later arrived at Coney Island.
Here she comes, ribbons flying from her half-forgotten hair. Look at her run, see what the world and love have done. See all her faces, see all her faces.
Once she arrived on the beach, a new world opened up to her. She met other people who were handicapped and who worked the booths along the boardwalk. People called them the freaks. Christèle became friends with the lobster woman who had claws instead of hands. Thanks to her new friend, She found work in a nearby booth. She became friends with all the other monsters. There were Snake Man, the bearded lady, the tattooed wonder, the Black Widow, and the fattest man in the world. Christèle became famous on Coney Island as a split-head woman. People would come into the dimly lit booth where she sat and watched her live in two places at once. She liked being able to relax and wander off in her reveries.
Be one person and make movies.
Her audience traveled with her and discovered Paris, carried along in a poetic moment where they could easily forget the humdrum details of their everyday lives. But of course, no one would have ever wished to be in her place.
Maybe they're gonna be.
As we walked along, we arrived at an empty intersection, and Christèle interrupted herself so that I could take pictures of her dancing like the Black Widow.
Waiting for someone who will set me free, passing the time.
As I gazed through the lens, she crossed the street undulating her long arms, walking sideways.
Where he'll be, or should I run right past?
She came back towards me and showed me some pictures of her with the freaks. She even let me keep a few, which I tucked into my notebook to illustrate my article later. I suggested that we visit Coney Island. She'd not gone back since she left, and worried that the nostalgia would be too painful. But she finally agreed, and we got on the subway.
This is 86th Street. This is the Manhattan-bound M train. The next stop is Avenue U. Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Once on the boardwalk, I asked her to pose for me in front of the abandoned booths. One day, the government passed a law forbidding the freaks from using their deformities for commerce. The booths were condemned. And Christèle and her friends found themselves in the street. Since then, she's lost track of all of them. She's heard that some went to Eastern Europe to try their luck. She had to learn to hide her handicap in order to start a new life among normal people.
Regular. What is regular?
With time, she managed to hold her head together for short periods of time. It took a lot of concentration and gave her terrible headaches. She would like to become an actress, in hopes that someone will create a split-head woman role that will make her famous.
You know, I don't know. I don't know.
We walked along the streets of Brooklyn until we reached the bridge. The night fell, and a magical light hovered over Manhattan. I sensed that Christèle was glad to have told me her story. She even seemed at ease in front of the camera. I'm glad to have met her, but I'm certain I will never see her again, unless it is in some obscure film d'auteur.
Isn't it crazy? I'm the only one on Earth.
The reasons for my life are in a million faces, like aching promises